There's something magical about Christmas Eve when you're a child, the way the house transforms into a fortress of anticipation, where every shadow could be a present, every creak a reindeer on the roof. I remember that particular year more clearly than any other, not because it was perfect or traditional, but precisely because it broke all the rules in the most spectacular way imaginable. It was supposed to be just like every other Christmas, the carefully decorated tree twinkling with lights, the smell of baking cookies still lingering in the air, the strict bedtime protocol that somehow always got pushed back just a little later, just to make sure Santa had time to visit. But this year, something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would turn our ordinary suburban street into a scene straight out of a bizarre dream, forever changing my perception of holiday magic and the lengths people would go to create it. Growing up, Christmas wasn't just a holiday in our household, it was a meticulously orchestrated production, with my parents taking on the roles of directors, set designers, and chief magic makers. My father, especially, had a particular talent for building anticipation, crafting an entire month-long countdown to December 25th that would make even the most cynical skeptic believe in the impossible. The Christmas tree was always perfectly symmetrical, each ornament placed with the precision of a surgeon. Cookies were baked on specific days, each type reserved for particular nights of the Advent calendar. And most importantly, Santa's visit was treated with the gravity of a state visit, complete with reindeer food left on the lawn, milk and cookies arranged on the mantelpiece, and a strict, no-peeking policy that somehow always managed to hold, even for the most curious among us. That year, though, things started differently. It began with a hushed conversation between my parents one evening, their voices dropping to tones so low I had to press my ear against the bedroom door to catch even a fragment of what they were saying. Something about the plan and making sure everything goes right this time. My young mind immediately went to worst-case scenarios. Maybe Santa couldn't make it? Had we been naughty without realizing it? Had the North Pole run out of presents? The possibilities swirled in my head like snowflakes, each one more alarming than the last. But when I asked my mother about it the next morning, she just smiled that mysterious, knowing smile and said, "Christmas will be magical this year, just you wait." And with that, she ushered me off to school, leaving me to wonder what could possibly make this Christmas different from all the others. The days leading up to December 24th followed their usual rhythm, but with an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite place. My father spent more time than usual in the garage, the rhythmic sounds of tools working, something metal echoing through the house. My mother was on the phone more frequently, her end of the conversations consisting mostly of, "Yes, that's perfect," and, "Are you sure it will work?" Even our neighbors seemed to be in on some secret conspiracy, their greetings accompanied by knowing smiles and winks. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, but it wasn't the usual Christmas excitement. It was something else, something electric and unpredictable, like waiting for a thunderstorm to break on the clearest blue sky day. By Christmas Eve, the mystery had reached a fever pitch. The usual pre-Christmas rituals were observed with heightened intensity: the baking of cookies, the wrapping of presents, the final adjustments to the tree, but everything felt different. When I asked my father why we were leaving extra cookies out this year, he just patted my head and said, "Santa gets extra hungry on special deliveries." When I noticed the unusual amount of reindeer food scattered across the lawn, my mother explained, "The reindeer work extra hard when there are important presents to deliver." Each question was met with an answer that satisfied on the surface but only deepened the mystery beneath, like peeling an onion with infinite layers. As bedtime approached, the usual excitement was mixed with a sense of unease. Something was definitely different this year, and while part of me thrilled at the possibility of something extraordinary, another part worried that whatever was coming might not live up to the perfect Christmas I had come to expect. My parents seemed to sense my anxiety and did their best to reassure me, but even their attempts at comfort seemed strained, as if they were holding back some crucial piece of information. "Just get some sleep," my father said, his voice unusually gentle. "Whatever happens tomorrow, it will be Christmas. That's what matters." The ritual of leaving treats for Santa and the reindeer was performed with an almost theatrical seriousness, each of us taking our assigned positions in the carefully choreographed performance. My mother arranged the cookies on a special plate, my father poured the milk, and I was tasked with scattering the last of the reindeer food around the tree. As we worked in silence, the only sounds were the ticking of the clock and the occasional rustle of wrapping paper as presents were shifted into their final positions. When we were done, we stood back to admire our handiwork, the plate of cookies and glass of milk looking almost lonely in the dim light of the living room. "Good night, everyone," my mother said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sleep well." "Merry Christmas," my father added, giving me a hug that lasted a second longer than usual. "Merry Christmas," I whispered back, already sensing that this night would be different from all the others. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I could hear the sounds of my parents moving about downstairs, their muffled voices occasionally rising above the quiet hum of the house. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of curtains, seemed amplified in the darkness, each sound a potential clue to whatever mystery was unfolding. The usual Christmas Eve anticipation warred with a growing sense that something unusual was about to happen, that the carefully constructed world of Christmas magic was about to be disrupted in some fundamental way. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I drifted into a restless sleep filled with dreams of roller skates and jingling bells, images that made no sense in the context of the Christmas story I knew but somehow felt important, significant in a way I couldn't articulate. When I woke hours later to the sound of a commotion downstairs, I knew immediately that something extraordinary was happening, that this Christmas would be unlike any other, that the strange traditions and mysterious preparations of the past few days were about to reveal their purpose in a way that would challenge everything I thought I knew about Santa, about Christmas, and about the magic that binds families together in moments of shared wonder and discovery. Querido espectador, confira se você ainda está inscrito no canal. Às vezes, a inscrição pode ser cancelada automaticamente, então é sempre bom verificar. Aproveite e se torne um membro do canal. Como membro, você terá benefícios incríveis, como assistir aos nossos conteúdos sem anúncios. Além disso, você pode apoiar nosso trabalho sendo um financiador do canal com um "Valeu". Sua ajuda nos permite investir em ferramentas melhores e elevar a qualidade da produção dos nossos conteúdos. Junte-se a nós nessa jornada e faça parte da nossa comunidade. Ah, e conta pra gente aí nos comentários de que cidade você está escutando esta história e que horas são por aí agora. Building Christmas Magic. The morning of December 24th dawned with that special kind of clarity that only happens in winter, when the air is crisp and the sunlight seems to sparkle against the freshly fallen snow. I woke before my alarm, as always on Christmas Eve, my body attuned to the rhythm of anticipation that had been building for weeks. The house was still quiet, save for the gentle hum of the furnace and the occasional drip of melting snow from the eaves. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet making no sound on the carpeted hallway as I made my way downstairs to the living room. There it was, the Christmas tree, standing in all its magnificent glory. My father had outdone himself this year, a towering spruce that reached nearly to the ceiling, its branches heavy with ornaments collected over generations. Each bauble had a story, each tinsel strand placed with the precision of a surgeon. My mother had always said that our tree was the most beautiful on the block, and seeing it now, in the soft morning light filtering through the windows, I had to agree. The colored lights reflected off the ornaments, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that danced across the walls. "Morning, sleepyhead," my mother's voice called from the kitchen, already bustling with activity. "Sleep well?" "Like a log," I replied, though my sleep had been anything but restful, filled with those strange dreams of roller skates and jingling bells that didn't quite fit the usual Christmas narrative. The images lingered as I poured myself a glass of juice, making a mental note to ask my mother about them later, though part of me suspected they were just my overactive imagination working overtime in anticipation of the big day. By the time the sun had properly risen, the full Christmas crew had assembled: my parents, my younger sister Lily, who was still too young to understand but excited by all the flashing lights, and my aunt and uncle who would be joining us for Christmas dinner. The house filled with the sounds of laughter and the smells of baking as my mother and aunt prepared the traditional Christmas cookies that would be left out for Santa. "Special batch this year," my mother whispered conspiratorially as I passed through the kitchen, her eyes twinkling with a secret I couldn't quite decipher. The morning unfolded in the comfortable rhythm of our Christmas rituals. My father and I went outside to finish the last-minute preparations on the lawn, ensuring the reindeer food was properly scattered, checking that the pathway to the front door was clear, and adjusting the outdoor lights that had been blinking since Thanksgiving. Everything had to be perfect, my father always said. Christmas was about tradition, about consistency, about the familiar patterns that brought comfort and joy year after year. As we worked, my father shared stories of his own childhood Christmases, tales of his father's elaborate Santa performances that had included everything from soot footprints on the carpet to strategically placed sleigh bell sounds from the roof. "Your grandfather really went all out," my father said, a nostalgic smile playing on his lips. "He believed that Christmas magic was something worth preserving, no matter how old you got." I nodded thoughtfully, helping him straighten a slightly crooked reindeer that stood guard near the front porch. "Do you think I'll believe in Santa forever?" I asked, the question hanging in the cold air between us. My father paused, his breath forming a small cloud in the winter morning. "Some things," he said, his voice softening, "are worth believing in long after you've figured out how the magic works. The spirit of Christmas, the joy of giving, the wonder of seeing lights in the dark, that's the real magic, not whether a man in a red suit can fit down a chimney." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, even as the temperature continued to drop. That was my father always finding the deeper meaning in things, always able to transform practical concerns into philosophical reflections. It was part of what made him the best Santa impersonator in the neighborhood, though of course I wasn't supposed to know that yet. His ability to capture the essence of the jolly old man while maintaining his own unique warmth was something I had always admired. By afternoon, the house had transformed into a Christmas wonderland. Wreaths adorned every door, garlands draped over mantels, and stockings hung by the chimney with care. My mother had set up the Santa cam on the tripod we used every year, a video camera that supposedly recorded Santa's visit while we slept. Of course, we all knew it was just a clever ruse to capture our reactions when we discovered the presents Christmas morning, but the ritual was part of the magic. "Help me with the final cookie arrangement," my mother called, her voice filled with the cheerful energy that only Christmas seemed to inspire. She had prepared dozens of cookies, gingerbread men with icing details that looked like they'd been professionally decorated, sugar cookies cut into holiday shapes and dusted with edible glitter, and chocolate chip cookies with just the right amount of gooey chocolate chips in each bite. As I carefully placed each cookie on the special plate my mother had saved for this occasion, I noticed something unusual. There were more cookies this year than ever before. "That's a lot of cookies for Santa," I commented, trying to sound casual while my mind raced with possibilities. My mother just smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Santa has a big appetite on Christmas Eve, especially when there are important deliveries to make." Her answer satisfied me on the surface, but it didn't explain why my father had been taking such particular care in arranging them in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate, a spiral design that started small in the center and grew larger toward the edges of the plate. Later that afternoon, as we finished decorating the tree with the final batch of ornaments, I noticed my uncle helping my father with something in the garage. Their voices were hushed, and they kept glancing toward the house as if worried someone might overhear. I tried to catch a glimpse of what they were working on, but they had pulled the garage door down most of the way, blocking my view. "What are they doing?" I asked my aunt as she adjusted the angel that would sit atop the tree. "Oh, just some last-minute Christmas preparations," she said vaguely, her focus on getting the angel's halo position just right. "Your father gets very particular about certain details every year." As evening approached, the excitement in the house reached fever pitch. Lily was practically bouncing off the walls, her small body unable to contain the energy of anticipation. My parents moved through the house with an efficiency that spoke of years of practice, each knowing their role in the Christmas Eve ritual. My uncle helped my father carry in the final presents from the garage while my mother supervised the placement of Santa's treats. The most magical part of the evening, as always, was the moment when we turned off all the lights except for the Christmas tree. We gathered in the living room, a circle of family bathed in the soft glow of colored lights, our faces illuminated with reflected joy. My father read "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" in his best Santa voice, his performance so convincing that even I, at my advanced age, almost believed he might actually be the real thing. When the reading was finished, my mother led us in the traditional Christmas Eve prayer, her voice soft and reverent as she thanked for our blessings and wished for peace and joy for all. Then came the final rituals, arranging the cookies on the mantelpiece, pouring the milk, and placing a small carrot for the reindeer on the windowsill. Each action was performed with a seriousness that bordered on the ceremonial, as if we were participating in some ancient rite rather than just preparing for a visit from a fictional character. As I climbed into bed that night, the familiar excitement mixed with a growing sense of unease. Something was definitely different this year, though I couldn't put my finger on what. The house seemed quieter than usual, my parents more subdued. Lily fell asleep immediately, her small face peaceful in the dim light from the hallway, but I lay awake, listening to the sounds of the night, the ticking of the clock, the rustle of curtains, the occasional car passing on the distant street. From downstairs, I could hear muffled voices, my parents and uncle talking in low tones, their words indistinct but the tone urgent. I strained to catch what they were saying, but the words remained just out of reach. Had something gone wrong with the Christmas plans? Was Santa not coming this year? The question swirled in my mind as I drifted into a restless sleep, filled once more with those inexplicable dreams of roller skates and jingling bells that seemed to grow more vivid with each passing hour. When I woke hours later to the sound of a strange mechanical hum coming from downstairs, I knew immediately that this Christmas would be unlike any other. Whatever secret my parents had been keeping, whatever preparations had been made with such care and precision, was about to be revealed in a way that would challenge everything I thought I knew about Christmas magic and the traditions that had shaped my understanding of the holiday season. When tradition takes an unexpected turn. The mechanical hum I'd heard from my bedroom window grew louder as I crept downstairs, my bare feet making no sound on the carpeted steps. Every instinct told me to go back to bed, to pretend I hadn't heard anything, but curiosity stronger than any fear pulled me forward. The living room was dark except for the multicolored lights of the Christmas tree, which cast long dancing shadows across the walls. There, in the middle of the room, stood my father and uncle, wrestling with what looked like a metal contraption with wheels. "What are you doing?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. My father jumped, turning to face me with a guilty expression on his face. "We were trying to be quiet," he said, his voice hushed. "You should be in bed." "What is that?" I asked, pointing at the strange object they were working on. It resembled a bicycle frame with an oversized seat and handlebars that seemed to be attached to something else entirely. "It's a surprise," my father said, his eyes twinkling in the Christmas lights. "Something special for Christmas." "But, what is it?" I pressed, taking a step closer. The mechanical hum came from some kind of motor attached to the device, and I noticed now that there were wheels attached to what looked like roller skate frames. "Your father's been working on this for weeks," my uncle said, unable to hide his pride. "It's a bit of a passion project." My father shot him a warning look, then sighed. "Okay, but you have to promise not to tell anyone. Especially not your mother." "Why not?" I asked, confused. "Because," my father said, wiping his hands on a rag, "it's part of a special Christmas surprise. Something we're doing for you and Lily." I looked from my father's excited face to the strange mechanical device, my mind trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Is this for Santa?" I asked, the words feeling ridiculous even as I said them. My father burst out laughing, then caught himself and lowered his voice. "Not exactly, but close. It's sort of a Santa delivery system. Something to make the magic more interactive this year." I stared at him, utterly baffled. "Interactive? How can Santa be interactive?" "Remember how you've been asking if there's any way we could make Christmas more exciting this year?" my father asked, his voice softening. "Well, we thought of something. Something that might make it a little more memorable." I nodded slowly, the pieces beginning to fall into place. The extra cookies, the unusual amount of reindeer food, the hushed conversations, the strange dreams of roller skates, they were all connected. And somehow, this strange machine was at the center of it all. "But what does it do?" I asked, my curiosity overriding my exhaustion. My father gestured to the device. "It's a special delivery mechanism. Sort of like a sleigh, but with wheels. And a motor. And lights. And music." He flipped a switch, and suddenly the machine came to life with a whirring sound. Colored lights began blinking along its frame, and a tinny version of Jingle Bells began playing from a small speaker attached to the handlebars. I couldn't help but laugh. It was ridiculous and wonderful all at once. "But, will Santa be riding this?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Not exactly," my father said, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Let's just say it's part of a new Christmas tradition we're trying out this year. Something to make the magic feel a little more real." I looked from the machine to my father, my mind racing with possibilities. What did he mean by more real? Was Santa actually coming early? Had they arranged for a special visitor? The questions tumbled through my head faster than I could process them. "Can I help?" I asked, my excitement building. My father hesitated, then nodded. "Sure. But you have to promise not to tell anyone. Especially Lily. We want it to be a surprise." "I promise," I said solemnly. For the next hour, my father, uncle, and I worked together to prepare the machine for its Christmas Eve debut. My father showed me how to operate the controls, how to adjust the speed, how to make the lights blink in different patterns. He even showed me where the hidden compartment was, the one that would hold the special Santa presents he'd been preparing all month. "It's not just about the presents," my father said as we worked, his voice serious. "It's about making memories. About creating something that will last long after the toys are forgotten. That's the real magic of Christmas, not what's under the tree, but the moments we share while waiting for Christmas morning." I nodded, understanding in a way I never had before. This was about more than just Santa. It was about family, about love, about creating traditions that would bind us together for years to come. And somehow, this ridiculous machine with its roller skates and blinking lights was the key to it all. By the time we finished, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the eastern sky. "You should try to get some sleep," my father said, clapping me on the shoulder. "We've got a big night ahead of us." As I climbed back into bed, my mind raced with possibilities. What would happen tonight? How would this new Christmas tradition play out? And most importantly, who would be riding that strange mechanical contraption when it made its appearance? The question swirled in my mind as I drifted into a restless sleep, filled with dreams of roller skates and jingling bells that somehow felt more real, more significant than any I'd had before. When I finally woke for real, hours later, the house was quiet except for the soft murmur of voices coming from the kitchen. I could smell coffee and bacon, the familiar sense of Christmas morning mingling with anticipation. As I got out of bed, I noticed something unusual on my bedside table, a small, neatly wrapped present with a tag that simply said, "For Christmas Eve." Curious, I picked it up and shook it gently. Something inside rattled, but it was too light to be what I expected. I carefully peeled back the wrapping paper to reveal a small pair of roller skates child-sized, with bright red wheels and silver that would sparkle in the light. Attached to a lace was a note in my father's handwriting: "Wear these tonight. Trust me." My breath caught in my throat. This was really happening. Whatever they had planned, it was bigger than anything I could have imagined. And somehow, those roller skates were part of it. The questions that had kept me awake all night returned with renewed force, but this time they were mixed with something else: excitement, wonder, and a growing sense that this Christmas would be unlike any other, in the best possible way. As I slipped the roller skates out of their box, I couldn't help but smile. Whatever was coming, whatever strange new tradition my family had created in secret, I was ready. Tonight, everything would change, and somehow, I just knew it would be for the better. Santa's unconventional entrance. The evening of December 24th dawned with a sense of magical anticipation that I hadn't felt in years. As I carefully laced up the red roller skates my father had given me, I couldn't help but marvel at how perfectly they fit. The wheels gleamed in the light of my bedroom, ready to carry me into whatever Christmas adventure my parents had planned. My heart beat with a mixture of excitement and nervousness as I tested my balance, gliding carefully back and forth across the carpet. "This is so cool," I whispered to myself, the sound of the wheels against the floorboard somehow amplifying the sense that tonight would be different from any other Christmas. I carefully made my way downstairs, my movements becoming more confident with each pass, until I was able to glide smoothly from the top of the stairs to the living room below. By evening, the house was buzzing with activity. My mother and aunt were in the kitchen, preparing the traditional Christmas feast that would be served the next day. My father and uncle were making final adjustments to some contraption in the garage, their occasional bursts of laughter punctuating the quiet evening air. Lily, my younger sister, was oblivious to the tension in the air, her small face alight with the simple joy of Christmas Eve. "Are you ready for the big night?" my father asked, appearing suddenly in the doorway of the living room where I was practicing my roller skating. He watched me with a proud smile, his eyes twinkling in the light of the Christmas tree. "Ready as I'll ever be," I replied, coming to a stop in front of him. "But what exactly is going to happen? You still haven't told me." My father hesitated, then crouched down so we were eye to eye. "Let's just say we're going to make Christmas a little more interactive this year. Something you'll remember for the rest of your life." Before I could ask more questions, my mother called us to the table for our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. The meal was a festive affair, with everyone in high spirits despite the undercurrent of anticipation that hung in the air. My father told jokes, my aunt shared stories of Christmases past, and my mother kept glancing at the clock as if counting down to something. After dinner came the familiar rituals: leaving cookies and milk for Santa, arranging the reindeer food on the lawn, and placing the final presents under the tree. But everything felt different this year, charged with an energy that had nothing to do with the usual Christmas excitement. As bedtime approached, my mother kissed us both good night, her lips brushing against our foreheads with unusual tenderness. "Sleep well, my darlings," she whispered. "Christmas morning will be here before you know it." Lily was asleep almost immediately, her small face peaceful in the dim light from the hallway. I, however, lay awake, listening to the sounds of the night outside my window. The usual Christmas Eve stillness was broken by occasional strange noises, whirring sounds, metallic clanks, and what sounded like someone practicing roller skating on the pavement below. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I heard a soft knock on my door. Opening it revealed my father, silhouetted in the hallway light. "Ready for your adventure?" he asked, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. I nodded, my heart pounding against my ribs. My father led me silently downstairs, where my uncle was waiting by the back door. "Shoo," my father whispered, holding a finger to his lips. "We don't want to wake the whole neighborhood." "What's happening?" I asked again, unable to contain my curiosity. "Tonight," my father said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "Santa is coming early. And he needs your help." Before I could process this information, my uncle opened the back door, and I gasped at what I saw. There, on the backyard patio, stood the most extraordinary contraption I had ever seen. It was a cross between a bicycle and a sleigh, with a red velvet seat, handlebars wrapped in white faux fur, and wheels attached to what looked like professional-grade roller skates. The entire vehicle was decked out with Christmas lights, blinking in time to a tinny version of Jingle Bells that played from a hidden speaker. "This," my father said proudly, "is the Santa Mobile. And you're going to be our first passenger." "But, why?" I stammered, my mind struggling to keep up with the reality of what I was seeing. Because, my father said, helping me onto the specially designed seat at the front of the vehicle, tonight, we're going to deliver Christmas magic to the neighborhood. In person. My uncle climbed into the driver's seat behind me, and my father positioned himself at the back. Hold on tight, my uncle warned as he flipped a switch, and the vehicle hummed to life with a sound that was somewhere between a motorboat and a reindeer's bell. As we glided out of the backyard and onto the sidewalk, I couldn't help but laugh with pure joy. The night air was crisp against my face, the Christmas lights from our house reflecting off the red wheels of the Santa Mobile. We moved silently, almost ghost-like, down the quiet street. Where are we going? I asked, my voice filled with excitement. To spread Christmas cheer, my father replied from his position at the back. One house at a time. The first few houses we visited were those of elderly neighbors who lived alone. As we approached each one, my father would knock on the door, then step back as the homeowner opened it, their faces transforming from confusion to delight when they saw the roller-skating Santa. "Merry Christmas," my father would call in his best Santa voice, which was so convincing I almost believed it was the real thing. From the North Pole. Each homeowner would invite us in for a moment, their eyes lighting up as they saw me, the elf assistant, sitting proudly in the front seat of the Santa Mobile. They'd offer us cookies or hot chocolate, which we politely declined, and share stories of their own Christmases past. As we continued our journey through the neighborhood, something magical began to happen. Other doors opened, and soon children and families were standing on their lawns, watching in awe as the roller-skating Santa made his way down the street. Some even came out to join us, their faces alight with wonder as they realized that this was something special, something real. By the time we reached the town square at the center of our neighborhood, a small crowd had gathered. Children pointed, parents smiled, and even the most cynical among us couldn't help but be caught up in the magic of the moment. My father, disguised as Santa, stood on a small platform that had been set up, addressing the crowd with his best jolly laugh. "To all a good night," he boomed, his voice carrying in the still evening air. "And to all a Merry Christmas." The crowd erupted into applause and laughter, their faces illuminated by the Christmas lights that decorated the square. For a moment, I forgot about the roller skates, the mechanical hum, and the fact that this Santa was really my father in disguise. I was caught up in the pure, unadulterated magic of the moment, watching as the people I loved most in the world created something extraordinary out of what should have been just another ordinary Christmas Eve. As the evening drew to a close, we made our way back home, the Santa Mobile gliding silently through the now quiet streets. When we reached our house, my father helped me off the vehicle, then turned to face me. "Well, what did you think?" he asked, his voice soft now that the performance was over. "It was amazing," I whispered, unable to find the words to express what I was feeling. "But, why did you do this?" My father's smile was gentle, his eyes reflecting the Christmas lights from our house. "Because Christmas isn't just about what you get," he said. "It's about what you give. About creating magic for others. About making memories that will last long after the presents are forgotten." He paused, then added, "And because you asked if there was any way to make Christmas more exciting this year. I wanted to show you that magic isn't something that just happens, it's something we create together." As I stood there, my roller skates still on my feet, I understood in a way I never had before. This was what Christmas was really about, not the presents under the tree, but the moments we shared while creating something beautiful for others. The roller skating Santa was just the beginning of a new tradition, one that would bind our family together in ways I couldn't yet imagine. But as I climbed back into bed, my mind racing with the events of the evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than I yet understood. The mechanical hum of the Santa Mobile, the way my father had looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching, the mysterious preparations that had taken place over the past few days, they all pointed to something bigger, something that would change my understanding of Christmas forever. Whatever it was, I knew I had to find out. Because somehow, I just knew that the roller skating Santa was only the beginning of the story. Unmasking the truth. When I finally drifted off to sleep that Christmas Eve, my mind was still racing with the images of the roller skating Santa, the glowing wheels, my father's jolly voice booming through the neighborhood, and the awestruck faces of the people we'd visited. But as I slept, my subconscious was busy connecting dots I hadn't even noticed were there, weaving together the clues that had been scattered throughout the past few days like breadcrumbs leading to a truth I wasn't ready to face. The next morning, Christmas dawned with a clarity that seemed almost too perfect. Lily was practically vibrating with excitement as we tiptoed downstairs to see what Santa had brought. But something was different this year. As we entered the living room, I couldn't help but notice something odd about the presents under the tree. They were arranged in a pattern that matched the spiral cookie arrangement from the night before. It was a small detail, but it caught my attention immediately. "Merry Christmas," my mother called from the kitchen, her voice bright with forced cheer. "Santa came early this year." As we opened our presents, I tried to focus on the joy of the moment, but my mind kept returning to the night before. The way my father had moved when he thought no one was watching, the slight familiarity in his Santa voice, the way he'd known exactly which houses to visit, it all pointed to something I couldn't quite articulate. When I unwrapped a new bicycle, the one I'd been dreaming about for months, I noticed something unusual. The training wheels were already attached, not by a store employee, but with the same nuts and bolts my father used in his workshop. After breakfast, my family gathered around the Christmas tree, admiring the decorations and sipping hot chocolate. My father was unusually quiet, watching us with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. When he caught my eye, he gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, as if we shared a secret that no one else knew. Later that day, as we helped clean up the wrapping paper, my aunt mentioned something that made my blood run cold. "You know," she said casually, "I saw Santa last night. Roller skating down Elm Street, of all things. The most peculiar thing I've ever seen." My mother froze, her hand halfway to a discarded gift bag. "You did?" she asked, her voice strained. "Sure did," my aunt replied, oblivious to the tension she'd created. "Stopped to chat with Mrs. Henderson, who hasn't left her house in years. Brought her a small gift and wished her a Merry Christmas. Seemed like a nice man, though his costume was a bit theatrical, if you ask me." I watched my mother's face, the carefully constructed mask of Christmas cheer beginning to crack. When she caught my eye, I saw something there: fear, guilt, and something else I couldn't name. It was then that I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that the roller skating Santa was not some random community member performing an act of charity. He was someone we knew, someone close to us. Later that afternoon, as my mother and aunt prepared Christmas dinner, I found myself alone with my father in the garage. The Santamobile stood in the corner, now silent and still, its wheels dusty from the night's adventure. My father was cleaning it with a tenderness that surprised me, his movements careful and deliberate. "Dad," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "About last night?" My father looked up, his expression unreadable. "What about it, son? Who was he?" I asked, the question hanging in the air between us. "The roller skating Santa?" My father sighed, setting down his rag. "I thought you might have figured it out." "I'm not sure," I admitted, my heart pounding against my ribs. "But I have a theory." "Let's hear it," my father said, his voice soft. "I think it was you," I said, the words coming out in a rush. "I think you were Santa." For a moment, my father didn't say anything. He just looked at me, his eyes searching my face as if trying to decide how much to reveal. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You're right," he said, his voice barely audible. "It was me." I stared at him, my mind reeling with the implications. But why? Why go to all that trouble? Why not just be like other dads and put presents under the tree? My father sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because Christmas is more than just presents, son. It's about making memories, about creating magic that lasts long after the toys are forgotten. I wanted to show you that magic isn't something that just happens, it's something we create together." He paused, then added, "And because you asked if there was any way to make Christmas more exciting this year, I wanted to show you that with a little imagination, even ordinary moments can become extraordinary." "But why roller skates?" I asked, the question tumbling out before I could stop it. "And why all the secrecy?" My father smiled, a genuine this time expression that lit up his face. "Roller skates because your grandfather used to deliver gifts on roller skates when he was young. He said it was the only way to get around quickly in the snow. And the secrecy because, well, because some magic works better when it's a surprise." As he spoke, something clicked into place. The mechanical hum of the Santamobile, the way my father had known exactly which houses to visit, the familiarity in his Santa voice, it all made sense now. My father wasn't just pretending to be Santa, he was continuing a family tradition, one that had been passed down from his father to him, and now, in a way, to me. "But," I started, then stopped, unsure how to express what I was feeling. "Does Mom know?" My father nodded. "Of course. She helped plan the whole thing. That's why she was so nervous these past few weeks." I thought back to the mysterious phone calls, the hushed conversations, the unusual amount of cookie preparation. It all fit now. My mother had been in on the secret all along, helping to create this magical Christmas experience for our family and the community. "And Lily?" I asked. "Does she know?" "Not yet," my father said gently. "When she's older, we'll tell her the story. For now, she just knows that Santa came early this year, on roller skates." As we stood there in the quiet garage, surrounded by the tools and memories of Christmases past, I felt something shift inside me. The roller skating Santa wasn't just a performance, it was a bridge between generations, a connection to the family members I'd never met but who still shaped my world in ways I was only beginning to understand. Can I ask you something else? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Of course, my father replied, his expression softening. Why me? I asked. Why did you let me come along last night? Why not just do it yourself? My father smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Because you needed to see this. Because you needed to understand that magic isn't just something that happens to us, it's something we create together. And because you're old enough now to start carrying on the tradition. He paused, then added, when you have children of your own, you'll understand. The joy of seeing that wonder in their eyes, knowing you're the one creating the magic, it's better than any present under the tree. As he spoke, I realized that this Christmas was different from any other. Not just because of the roller skating Santa or the mechanical hum of the Santa Mobile, but because it marked a transition in my understanding of the world. I was growing up, and with that growth came a new kind of magic, one that wasn't based on belief in the impossible, but on the knowledge that love and creativity could turn ordinary moments into something extraordinary. Later that evening, as we gathered around the Christmas tree for our traditional reading of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," I found myself looking at my father with new eyes. When he read in his best Santa voice, I could see the performance now, but it didn't diminish the magic, it deepened it. Because I knew now that the magic wasn't in the illusion, but in the love that motivated it, in the care that went into creating a special moment for someone else. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I made a silent promise to myself. Someday, I would continue this tradition, this roller skating Santa that connected our family to the community in a way nothing else could. But first, I had to understand more about the man behind the red suit, about the family history that had led to this extraordinary Christmas, about the truth behind the magic that had transformed my understanding of what it meant to believe. And as I closed my eyes, I knew that the answers I sought were closer than I realized, waiting just beneath the surface of the story I thought I knew, ready to reveal themselves in a way that would change everything once again. Christmas redefined. The days following Christmas Eve 1998 blurred together in a haze of conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was the pure joy of the holiday season, the twinkling lights, the scent of evergreen, the taste of gingerbread cookies fresh from the oven. On the other hand, there was this nagging sense of displacement, as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet and I was still trying to find my balance. I had always prided myself on being one of the last kids in my class to believe in Santa, and yet here I was, reeling from the knowledge that the man behind the red suit was my own father. It started subtly. Every time I heard jingle bells, my ears would perk up, my heart rate quickening as I scanned the room, searching for the source. When I passed the garage and caught a glimpse of the Santamobile tucked away in the corner, I'd pause, my mind racing with questions. Why had my father gone to such elaborate lengths? What was so special about this particular Christmas that warranted such an extraordinary performance? These questions swirled in my mind as I helped my mother pack away the Christmas decorations, each ornament carefully wrapped in tissue paper before being returned to its box. My movements were mechanical, my thoughts elsewhere. When my mother noticed my distraction, she would squeeze my shoulder or offer a small smile, but she didn't press. She seemed to understand that I was working through something, processing the revelation about my father's secret life as the neighborhood roller skating Santa. It was your grandfather's idea, you know, my mother said one afternoon as we were carefully placing the angel on top of the box containing the tree ornaments. When your father was little, your grandfather used to deliver gifts on roller skates to families who couldn't make it to church on Christmas Day. He said it was his way of bringing the magic to them. I looked up from the ornament I was wrapping. So it's a family tradition? My mother nodded, her eyes distant with memory. It is. Your grandfather stopped when your father was about your age, but your father never forgot. He said it was the most magical Christmas he'd ever experienced. When you came along and started asking questions about Santa, your father knew it was time to bring the tradition back. I thought about the way my father's face had lit up when he talked about the roller skating Santa, the passion in his voice as he described the mechanical hum of the Santamobile, the careful planning that had gone into every detail. It wasn't just a performance to him, it was a connection to his own father, a way of honoring the man who had first shown him the magic of Christmas. But why didn't he tell me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why keep it a secret? My mother sighed, sitting down on the floor beside me. Because some things are better discovered than explained. Your father wanted you to experience the magic, not just hear about it. And he wanted you to understand that magic isn't just something that happens, it's something we create for each other. As she spoke, something shifted inside me. The disappointment I'd been feeling, the sense that my childhood innocence had been shattered, began to transform into something else. Understanding. My father hadn't been deceiving me, he had been including me in a tradition that had been passed down through generations, one that connected our family to something larger than ourselves. The following weekend, my father took me to visit his parents, my grandparents. As we drove to their house, the silence in the car was comfortable, not strained. I had so many questions, but they remained unspoken, waiting for the right moment. When we arrived, my grandmother greeted us at the door, her face breaking into a smile when she saw me. "Come in, come in. I've been wanting to show you something." She led me to the den, where a collection of old photographs was displayed on the walls. Most were familiar family gatherings, holidays, birthdays. But then she pointed to a specific one, taken in what looked like the 1950s. "There's your grandfather," she said, her voice soft with nostalgia. "Dressed as Santa, of course. But on roller skates." I leaned in closer, studying the black and white image. There he was, my grandfather, unmistakable even in the Santa costume, his eyes crinkling with laughter as he stood beside a similar contraption to the one my father had built. The resemblance was uncanny not just in the physical features, but in the way he stood, the tilt of his head, the set of his shoulders. He used to deliver gifts to families who couldn't get out, my grandmother explained, her fingers tracing the outline of the photograph. Especially the elderly, the sick. He said Christmas wasn't just for those who could come to the church celebration, it was for everyone. As she spoke, I began to understand the depth of this tradition, the way it had shaped my father, and now, in turn, was shaping me. This wasn't just about maintaining the illusion of Santa for children, it was about extending the magic of Christmas to those who needed it most, about creating moments of joy in a world that often felt dark and uncertain. Later that afternoon, my father and I were alone in the backyard, repairing a section of the fence that had been damaged during a winter storm. The work was simple, repetitive, but it gave us a comfortable rhythm to fall into, a space where conversation could flow naturally without pressure. "You know," my father said, hammering a nail into place with practiced ease, "I was worried you'd be upset when you found out." I looked at him, surprised. Why would I be upset? "Because some kids feel betrayed when they learn the truth about Santa," he said, his voice casual, but I could sense the underlying tension. Like their parents have been lying to them all these years. I thought about this for a moment, the hammering providing a steady beat to my thoughts. But it wasn't a lie, was it? Not really. You were just continuing a story. My father stopped hammering and turned to look at me. His eyes searched mine, as if trying to gauge my sincerity. That's exactly how I've always thought of it. The magic of Santa isn't in the man himself, it's in the spirit of giving, in the joy of creating something special for others. The costume, the roller skates, the Santa mobile, those are just tools to help tell the story. He paused, then added, "And this year, I wanted you to be part of telling the story. I wanted you to see that magic isn't just something you believe in, it's something you do." As he spoke, I realized that this was the heart of the matter. My father wasn't just preserving a tradition, he was teaching me a way of being in the world. The roller skating Santa wasn't about maintaining an illusion, it was about actively creating joy for others, about finding creative ways to connect with the community and spread holiday cheer. But why roller skates? I asked, the question that had been bothering me since Christmas Eve. Why not just use a regular sleigh, like everyone else? My father smiled, a genuine expression that lit up his face. Because roller skates are unexpected. They bring a smile to people's faces. They make people stop and wonder. And because they remind us that Christmas doesn't have to be traditional to be magical. Sometimes the most magical moments are the ones that break the rules. He paused, then added, "Besides, your grandfather always said that the sound of roller skates on pavement was the most beautiful Christmas music there was. Better than jingle bells, even." I laughed, surprised by this admission. "Really? Really?" my father said, his eyes twinkling. He used to say that each sound told a story of joy, of giving, of community. As we continued working on the fence, the conversation flowed naturally from one topic to another. We talked about Christmas memories, about family traditions, about what made the holiday special to each of us. My father shared stories of his own childhood, of the year his father had delivered gifts on roller skates, of the way it had made him feel connected to something larger than himself. When we finally finished the repair job, my father clapped me on the shoulder. "You know," he said, "I was thinking. Maybe next year, you could help me design a new version of the Santa Mobile. Something that incorporates some of your ideas." I looked at him, surprised by the invitation. "You mean I could be part of the planning?" "Of course," my father said, his expression serious. "This tradition isn't just mine, it's ours. And someday, it will be yours to carry on." As he spoke, I felt something shift inside me. The disappointment I'd felt when I learned the truth about Santa was now completely gone, replaced by a sense of pride and belonging. I wasn't just the son of the roller skating Santa, I was becoming part of the tradition, part of the story. That evening, as I lay in bed thinking about the day's events, I realized something profound. The magic of Christmas wasn't in believing in Santa, it was in understanding that the people who loved us were the ones creating the magic all along. My father hadn't just been playing a role, he had been teaching me a way of seeing the world, a way of finding joy in the unexpected, a way of connecting with others through acts of kindness and creativity. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a silent promise to myself. I would learn everything I could about the roller skating Santa tradition, about my grandfather who had started it, about the values that had been passed down through generations. And someday, when I had children of my own, I would continue the tradition, not just to create magic for them, but to teach them the same lesson my father had taught me, that the most magical thing about Christmas isn't what we receive, but what we give, not just to our loved ones, but to the world around us. But as I closed my eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to this story, more to the roller skating Santa than I yet understood. Questions lingered in the darkness, questions about my grandfather, about the origins of this extraordinary tradition, about why it had been kept secret for so long. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that the answers were waiting, just beyond the next chapter of this unforgettable Christmas journey. Creating unforgettable moments. The years following that unforgettable Christmas blurred together like watercolor painting left in the rain. Each holiday season brought new traditions and memories, but none quite compared to the year the roller skating Santa made his debut in our neighborhood. As I grew older, I began to understand that what made that Christmas so special wasn't just the spectacle of it all, but the way it connected me to something larger than myself, a legacy of kindness and creativity that had been passed down through generations. By the time I reached high school, I had become the unofficial family historian of the roller skating Santa tradition. Every Christmas Eve, I would gather our family around the fireplace, not the electric one in the living room, but the real one in the basement where my father had set up a workshop, and share the story of that extraordinary night. I had memorized every detail, from the mechanical hum of the Santa Mobile to the way my father's voice had transformed when he put on the red suit. You know, I'd say, warming my hands by the fire, that Santa Mobile was actually the third generation of its kind. My grandfather used a wooden contraption with wheels made of old roller skate parts. My father improved it with a motor and better lights. And someday, I hope to build one that can carry even more joy to even more people. My sister Lily, who had been too young to remember the actual event, would hang on every word, her eyes wide with wonder. But was it really Dad? She'd ask every year, as if there might be doubt. Absolutely, I'd reply, my voice filled with certainty. And the best part? He didn't just do it for us. He visited families who couldn't get out, people who were sick or alone. That's the real magic of Christmas, not the presents, but the way we show up for each other. As I grew into adulthood, I found myself drawing on the lessons of that roller skating Santa in unexpected ways. When I was in college, I organized a community toy drive that delivered gifts to children in hospitals on Christmas Day. The project started small with just a few volunteers and a borrowed van, but it grew each year, eventually becoming a citywide initiative that served hundreds of families. Where did you get the idea? My mother asked when I told her about it during a holiday break. I smiled, thinking of that Christmas Eve when I was just a boy. From the roller skating Santa, I said simply. From the idea that Christmas isn't just about what happens under our own tree, but about how we can spread joy to others. My father, who had been listening quietly, nodded his approval. That's what I hoped you'd learn, he said, his voice thick with emotion. That the magic isn't in believing, it's in doing. As I built my own life, career, and eventually family, the roller skating Santa tradition remained a touchstone, a reminder of what truly matters during the holiday season. When my own daughter was old enough to understand, I began to prepare her for the revelation, much as my father had prepared me. Soon, I'd tell her as we decorated our Christmas tree, you're going to learn something special about Santa. Something that will change how you think about Christmas magic. What is it? She'd ask, her eyes wide with curiosity. I'll tell you when the time is right, I'd reply, echoing the words my father had used with me. For now, just know that magic is real. But sometimes, it looks a little different than we expect. The year my daughter turned 8, I knew the time had come. On Christmas Eve, I took her to the garage where I had been working on my own version of the Santa Mobile, a sleeker, more modern design that incorporated elements from both my father's and grandfather's creations. This, I said, gesturing to the contraption with pride, is how I plan to continue the tradition. What do you think? She studied it carefully, her eyes tracing the outline of the red velvet seat, the blinking lights, the wheels that gleamed in the garage's fluorescent lighting. It's beautiful, she said softly. But why do you need roller skates? Because, I explained, the roller skates make it unexpected. They bring a smile to people's faces. They remind us that Christmas magic doesn't have to be traditional to be real. As I spoke, I saw the understanding dawn in her eyes, the same way it had in mine all those years ago. The knowledge that Santa wasn't just a figure from a storybook, but a living tradition carried forward by ordinary people doing extraordinary things. "When will you ride it?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. "This Christmas," I said. "I thought maybe you'd like to come along." Her face lit up with joy. "Really? Like you did with Dad?" "Exactly like that," I said, my heart swelling with pride. "Some traditions are meant to be passed down. And I think you're ready to carry this one forward." That Christmas Eve, as we prepared for our journey through the neighborhood, I found myself reflecting on how far the roller skating Santa tradition had come. From my grandfather's humble beginnings to my father's elaborate contraption to my own modernized version, each generation had added its own touch, while preserving the core essence of the tradition, bringing joy to others, creating community, and reminding people that magic is real, even if it doesn't look exactly like we expect. As we glided silently through the quiet streets, my daughter riding shotgun in my custom Santamobile, I couldn't help but think about the legacy we were creating. Not just for our own family, but for all the families we visited, for the elderly man who waved from his window as we passed, for the children who chased us down the street, their faces alight with wonder. "Daddy," my daughter said, breaking the silence as we approached our first stop, "why do you do this?" I looked at her, seeing the same curiosity in her eyes that I had possessed at her age. "Because," I said, my voice softening, "Christmas isn't just about what we get. It's about what we give. About creating magic for others. About making memories that will last long after the presents are forgotten." She nodded thoughtfully, then added, "But don't you get tired? Don't you want to just stay home and celebrate with us?" "Of course I do," I replied, pulling up to our first stop, an elderly woman who lived alone at the end of the street. "But this is how I celebrate. This is how I honor the tradition your grandfather started, that your father continued, and that now, we're sharing together." As I donned the Santa costume, my daughter watching with rapt attention, I felt a connection to all the generations who had come before me, a sense of responsibility to carry forward the magic they had worked so hard to create. When I knocked on the door and the elderly woman opened it, her face transforming from confusion to delight as she recognized the roller skating Santa, I saw the same wonder I had experienced as a child, the same magic that had transformed my understanding of Christmas. "Merry Christmas!" I boomed in my best Santa voice, which wasn't quite as convincing as my father's, but carried its own special warmth. "From the North Pole." The woman invited us in for a moment, her eyes lighting up as she saw my daughter sitting proudly in the Santamobile. She shared stories of her own Christmases past, of loved ones no longer with us, of traditions that had been lost but never forgotten. As we listened, I realized that we weren't just delivering presents, we were delivering connection, reminding people that they were part of something larger, that they were remembered, that they mattered. As we continued our journey through the neighborhood, I found myself thinking about the way traditions evolve and adapt, how they take on new meanings as they're passed from one generation to the next. The roller skating Santa had started as a practical solution, my grandfather's way of bringing gifts to those who couldn't get to church. It had become a tradition in my father's time, a way of creating magic and community. And in my generation, it had transformed once more, into a way of teaching children about the true meaning of Christmas. By the time we returned home, our cheeks flushed with cold, our hearts full of joy, I knew that the roller skating Santa tradition would continue. Not just through me, but through my daughter, and someday, through her children. Each generation would add its own touch, its own interpretation, but the essence would remain the same. The magic of Christmas isn't in what we receive, but in what we give, not in the illusions we create, but in the love that motivates them, not in the presents under the tree, but in the memories we create while spreading joy to others. As I helped my daughter out of the Santamobile, she turned to me, her eyes shining with understanding. "I think I get it now," she said softly. "What's that?" I asked, curious to see what she had taken away from the experience. She looked at me, then at the Santamobile, then back at our house, lights twinkling in the windows. "Christmas isn't just a day," she said. "It's a way of being. It's about showing up for people, about creating magic, about making memories that last forever." I smiled, tears welling in my eyes. "You're absolutely right," I said, pulling her into a hug. "And that's the most important lesson of all." As we stood there in the quiet of our backyard, the stars overhead and the memory of our journey fresh in our minds, I knew that this was what Christmas was really about. Not the presents, not the decorations, not even the Santa himself, but the connections we make, the love we share, the memories we create together. And somehow, I just knew that the roller skating Santa was only the beginning of our story, that there were still more memories to be made, more magic to be created, more joy to be shared in the Christmases yet to come. As I stood there in the quiet of our backyard, the stars overhead and the memory of our journey fresh in our minds, I knew this was what Christmas was really about, not the presents under the tree, not the decorations, not even the Santa himself, but the connections we make, the love we share, the memories we create together. And somehow, I just knew that the roller skating Santa was only the beginning of our story, that there were still more memories to be made, more magic to be created, more joy to be shared in the Christmases yet to come. Looking back now, all these years later, I realized that what made that Christmas so unforgettable wasn't just the spectacle of a Santa on roller skates gliding through the neighborhood. It was the way it challenged everything I thought I knew about tradition, about belief, about what makes Christmas magical. It was the moment when fantasy and reality collided, and somehow, both were better for it. We live in a world that often tells us that magic has to be perfect, that traditions must be followed exactly as they've always been done, that Christmas should look like something out of a greeting card. But the roller skating Santa taught me something different, that magic isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's not about following a script, it's about writing your own story. It's not about replicating what came before, it's about honoring the spirit while making it your own. That Christmas broke all the rules, and in doing so, revealed something profound. The most meaningful traditions aren't the ones we inherit unchanged, but the ones we adapt and renew for our own time and place. They're the ones that speak to our particular circumstances, that address the needs of our community, that reflect the values we hold most dear. My grandfather started the roller skating Santa tradition because he recognized that some people needed Christmas brought to them. My father continued it because he wanted to create that same sense of wonder for his children. And I carry it forward because I want my daughter to understand that Christmas isn't just a day on the calendar, it's a way of being in the world. What traditions will you adapt and renew in your own life? What unexpected moments of magic will you create for those you love? What memories will you make that will be treasured long after the wrapping paper has been recycled and the cookies have been eaten? I think about the elderly woman we visited that first Christmas Eve, the way her face lit up when she saw the roller skating Santa, the stories she shared about Christmases past, the way she seemed to come alive in the presence of unexpected joy. I think about the children who chased us down the street, their faces alight with wonder, their laughter echoing in the crisp winter air. I think about my father's voice, transformed into Santa's jolly boom, the care he took in every detail of the performance, the love that motivated every aspect of the tradition. These are the moments that define Christmas, not just for me, but for all of us who have experienced the magic of something unexpected, something real, something that breaks through the ordinary to touch something deeper within us. The world often tells us that we need more things to be happy, more money to be secure, more status to be worthy. But Christmas teaches us something different, that what we really need is connection, presence, love. That the most precious gifts aren't wrapped in paper with bows, but given freely from the heart. That the most magical moments aren't planned or scripted, but emerge spontaneously from the space between us when we're fully present with one another. This Christmas, as you gather with loved ones, as you decorate your tree, as you prepare special meals, I invite you to look beyond the familiar routines and rituals. I invite you to see what's really there, not just the decorations, not just the presents, not just the food, but the love that animates it all. I invite you to recognize that you are part of a story that stretches back through generations, that connects you to people you've never met, that will continue long after you're gone. And I invite you to add your own chapter to that story, to create new traditions, to make new memories, to share new moments of joy with those who matter most to you. Because that's what Christmas is really about, not the perfection of the celebration, but the imperfection of our love. Not the flawlessness of the traditions, but the authenticity of our connections. Not the magic of the Santa story, but the magic we create when we show up for one another, when we give of ourselves freely, when we remember that we're all part of something larger than ourselves. The roller skating Santa taught me that magic isn't just something we believe in, it's something we do. It's not just something that happens to us, it's something we create for one another. And that, ultimately, is the greatest gift Christmas has to offer. The reminder that we are all magicians in our own right, that we all have the power to transform ordinary moments into extraordinary memories, to bring light into the darkness, to create joy where there was none, to make the world a little more magical, one unexpected act of kindness at a time. So this Christmas, as you gather with those you love, I invite you to ask yourself, what magic will I create? What memories will I make? What unexpected moments of joy will I bring to those around me? Because in the end, that's what Christmas is really about, not the presents under the tree, but the love in our hearts, not the perfection of our celebrations, but the authenticity of our connections, not the magic of the season, but the magic we create when we choose to be present, to be loving, to be kind. And as you create that magic, remember this, the roller skating Santa was never really about Santa at all. He was about love. He was about community. He was about connection. He was about showing up for one another in ways that surprise and delight, that break through the ordinary to touch something deeper within us. He was about the magic we create when we choose to be more than we thought we could be, when we choose to give more than we thought we had, when we choose to love more deeply than we thought possible. That, my friends, is the true spirit of Christmas. Not in what we receive, but in what we give. Not in the illusions we create, but in the love that motivates them. Not in the presents under the tree, but in the memories we create while spreading joy to others. This Christmas, and every Christmas, may you find ways to create that magic in your own life. May you surprise and delight those you love. May you show up in ways that break through the ordinary to touch something deeper within us all. And may you remember that the most precious Christmas gifts aren't wrapped under trees, they live in our hearts forever. Merry Christmas, everyone. And may your roller skates glide smoothly on the path of joy.